Hello, everyone. It is Monday, so we are back with another episode of Scaredy Chat. I'm happy to be back. We took a little bit of a break, but don't worry, there's plenty more fears to discuss. I'm Monica.
And I'm Kaitlin.
And Kaitlin, I feel like there's always scary things to talk about. It's literally never ending, so I'm gonna need to know what you've got for this week.
Okay, so I have been watching just entirely too much television, probably just because I've been inside and I've been bored. So I've been watching like a couple of shows, but there's one show that I think is so good right now. It's on HBO Max, and I was very apprehensive to start it because it is about the pandemic, kind of, sort of. So it's called Station 11, and it's basically, the idea is that there is a flu virus. So already we're all like, okay, like, do we need this? I don't know. But there's a flu virus that basically wipes out like 98% of the world.
Oh my God, that's everyone.
That's like most people. Yeah, it's almost everyone. But the premise of the show is basically that they have to kind of start a new society without like electricity or without like just normal stuff, like there's no cars or whatever, but it kind of jumps back in time between like the present day and then the past, and sort of like how everybody got to like this point in history. But I'm watching the first episode. The first episode basically is like the breakout of the pandemic episode. And you're in a theater with the characters are in a theater, and they watch as like, oh my God, what's his name? Gael. He was in Havana, Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights. I believe he's a very famous actor, but that's where I know him from. Gael, something.
Oh God, that terrible movie is where you pulled him out of.
Monica.
Havana Nights is trash.
Gael Garcia Bernal, who is like literally, I think he might have won like an Academy Award, but that's what I'm gonna know him from. But he dies on stage, like performing, and it's from this flu, which then like breaks out in Chicago. And it's like incredibly traumatizing, especially like after living through like the last 2 years. But the show is so good, I can't stop watching. So I'm like, okay, I'm watching that. So that's like my pandemic content, my re-traumatizing content. And then I watched the new season of Search Party. Are you a Search Party fan?
I need to watch it. There's Monica, so many things I'm so behind on.
It's so good. But I just feel like it's very relevant because Search Party this season also had like kind of a pandemic storyline. And it's all giving me like, oh, no, like, let's not. But I can't stop watching it. I like love it so much. But basically, I'm going to spoil stuff for everybody about Search Party season 5. But it is 2 things that I think are really fun. And I know that you think are really fun, which is cults and zombies.
Oh, yeah.
So that is weirdly a big part of Search Party season 5, where basically the character played by Aaliyah Shawkat starts a cult and tries to develop this pill basically to bring enlightenment to the world. But instead of enlightenment being brought to the world, there is a zombie apocalypse. So that is a huge spoiler. But guys, like, even if you're like, oh, I don't think I'm going to watch it, and now she spoiled it, I don't want to watch it for sure, like, watch it. But it just kind of made me think about how, like, I feel like we live in very scary times. And I think that there's, like, 2 ways to go about it. Like, you're either leaning into the thing that's scary, which is, like, the pandemic, like, the world falling apart, zombies, potentially. And you don't want to watch any of that content. Or you're just, like, it's either, like, you're leaning in or you're leaning out. And I think I was leaning out and watching, like, Drop Dead Diva and, like, happy shows for a while. But now I'm just going to, like, lean back in. But where are you with, like, realistic, scary things? Or semi-realistic, scary things?
I mean, I'm honestly surprised that both of those shows got the green light, as they say, because, like, we keep hearing, like, no pandemic content. Don't even try. Yeah. Don't even pitch. Don't even think about trying to put something out that has to do with COVID or any pandemic, And
yeah.
So there's 2 right now. That's actually really surprising to me.
So I think like Search Party works because it was their final season. It took place in New York. It was like there was no way that you could kind of not acknowledge it. So they could have done the thing where it was like, oh, COVID, and now we'll just do the rest of like our story the normal way, which is how so many shows are doing it.
Yeah, that's how Law and Order SVU did it, and I thought it was hilarious.
Wait, what did they do? They were like, thank God that pandemic is over and we can go back to solving sexual violence crimes.
Pretty much, like, for like a few episodes, they were like wearing masks.
Yep.
And then they did one true like COVID episode. Like, there's like a woman who, all the bad things that can happen from COVID happened to her family, and she's at like the end of her rope, so she's holding people hostage. It has, so like that's the one where it's like it was really like COVID, and then after that they were like, the pandemic's over, and they don't wear masks anymore. They've like moved on. I just thought it was so funny that they were like even trying it, and at one point, because Elliot Stabler is back and he has his own show now. Christopher Maloney.
He back, or is he just he has his own show?
He is back, but he's not. He's in a different unit now, and like that. So there's two shows now, and like that, it's organized crime.
Cool.
So he's in the organized crime unit now. So like like gang violence and things like that. But they do a lot of crossovers. Like Olivia Benson will pop up in organized crime, or he'll pop up in SVU. And there was one point where she's like trying to explain like her life to him, and she's like going through like all these events, and then she's like, and then COVID. And she stops talking. It's like the end of like the little speech she's giving. I'm like, oh my God, this is hilarious.
Here's 16 seasons that you missed. And then COVID. It is true. It's like such a weird thing. Like, I don't know if TV networks think that if they don't acknowledge it, we'll all be like, this isn't realistic. But sometimes I'm just like, you know what? I do want the escapism. I think that the only way to do pandemic content right, actually, is if you're going to make it almost like a commentary on it, and that's the thing you're doing. I find it annoying when people are like there's this thing on This Is Us that they did last season, which is like, it's so funny because it'll be like 3 people in a scene, and they come into the scene wearing masks, and they take off the masks. And then my favorite thing happened, I think, last season with one. It was like 3 people in the scene, and it's like a director and 2 actors. And the director comes in and is like, thank you guys so much for quarantining and testing before we did this rehearsal. Anyway, we're just going to
get into it.
Exactly. But it's funny. It's like, there is something kind of soothing about like seeing the thing that is so scary and so like real on screen and being able to laugh at it. So like in a way it is kind of fun, but I don't like it when it's like, it's so shoehorned in because we have to, and then we're never going to think about it again. Yeah. Like, okay, it's like pick one or the other, or just ignore it. Just ignore the scary stuff.
I think if you're going to do that weird half-mast thing, just ignore it. Like, just don't even bother.
It's like not, But I will say, like, look, going back to Search Party, and I'm sorry to spoil the zombie twist for everybody, because it is kind of a twist. But I like, that show has reinvented itself 20 times over, and it is so inspiring that it's able to continue to be like relevant to the times, even when the times are so insane. Like,
I do think all of this content about the zombie apocalypse was trying to prepare us for a pandemic.
Yeah, it did a great job.
Yeah, we were all so prepared. But it's the same idea, like, this thing is spreading. What do we do? That's every zombie movie.
It's true. It's like I never really assumed anything about a pandemic until we experienced a pandemic. And I've seen so many zombie movies.
So many.
And I've seen things where it's like, obviously the short film that we made years ago was literally about a contagion being, passed along, like an origin source of a contagion, and then a zombie catching it and spreading it. Then yet I was still like, could never happen here. Yeah.
Could never happen to me.
This week we actually are not talking about zombies, though I feel like I just went on a huge tangent about, here's 2 shows I recommend. They're kind of spooky. They're kind of irrelevant to society. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about this week. But we are talking about something that is scary for different reasons. So...
yeah, we're talking about the afterlife, and if there is one, and do I exist past this body and time? Who knows?
And also tsunamis. That's
And
also what we're talking about.
tsunamis.
And tsunamis. There's a lot to unpack here. Yeah. Anyway, guys, looking forward to that. I don't know. I already heard the conversation. I was a part of it. I don't know why I said it that way. Yeah, I was there. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoy our conversation.
Hello, everyone. This is the reason you listen to the podcast. Kaitlin and I have already been babbling for probably 20 minutes, and you may have skipped it. And if you did, I don't blame you. But now we're here to the point. We are here with an amazing writer and actress today that I am so stoked to chat with. Everybody, Dani Fernandez.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
Thanks you for joining us.
Thanks so much for being here, Dani. I am so excited to talk to you about your fear.
It's very specific. I have a couple of fears. This one is very specific. Yeah.
We have a few dozen. That's kind of why we're doing the podcast.
Yeah.
And every time there's a new person on, I feel like a new fear of mine is unlocked or just uncovered. So I was super interested in this because I feel like you unlocked another fear of mine that I kind of forgot about.
Yeah, that is fascinating to think like something that you don't even think of, and then people come on and you're like, oh, should I be thinking of this?
Yes. Like we had somebody who her fear was being taken at any time. Like someone's going to kidnap me. And I was like, oh my God, should I be worried? Like,
yeah. But I'm also like I'm also like a big believer in like energy and like manifesting and self-fulfilling prophecies. So I don't know if I'm like, I'm going to get pulled over, or like whatever, I'm going to get a ticket, then I think like I probably will get a ticket that day, if that makes sense. Some things you can't help, but I don't want to like actively be thinking of a billion fears every time I go through the world, because I feel like I probably will end up making those come true.
Yes, if they're in the top of your mind, I think it is more likely for things to happen too. So let's stick to the fears we can't help, like your very specific fear. And also, I love when people have very specific fears, because that's actually when most of our listeners relate to it. Like the more off-puttingly niche it is, the more people are like, oh, I have the same fear. So please, Dani, take it away. Tell us about your fear.
Okay, so my fear is, I guess it started around the time when I was, I don't know, maybe elementary school or middle school. It is about an asteroid hitting the ocean and causing a massive tsunami that will overtake me and kill me and drown me. And I think it stems from Deep Impact. I think it stems from that movie, but that was like a common theme, I feel like, in the 90s and early aughts. Like that was, and also like I still see it all the time on Twitter. Like, what would you do in this scenario? And it's like a meteor like coming and hitting Earth, and then like half of Earth, and everyone's like, like, what kind of question is that? Like, what could you do? But yeah, I used to have dreams as a child about a tsunami wiping out my family.
Where did you grow up? Were you near water?
Yeah, so my parents grew up in San Diego, and so we would go there often. I grew up for a large portion of my life in Orange County, and then I moved to Texas. And so I was in Dallas, so I was not around water there. But for the period of time that I was in Southern California, I was. And I just kept thinking, like, I still have this fear that I'm going to be at the beach and there'll be an earthquake when I'm at the beach and there'll be a tsunami.
Oh my gosh, I share that fear. Because like, in the movies, when the tsunami starts, it starts with the people on the beach, and the water has gone really far back. And everyone's like, what's going on? And you're like, no, it's a rain, it's a tsunami. Like, that's very obviously what's happening.
I feel like it's actually just like one kid collecting seashells, and then he looks up and he looks wistfully in the distance, and then he turns around and to be like, Mom, what's going on? And then it's too late. And I imagine that was what you imagined. You're like, that was me. I was a San Diego kid on the beach picking up seashells, and then too late.
Yeah, but what was wild is like, it was always happening to my family first. Like I'd always watch them get like swept away, and I'd be like trying to run up. I honestly, when I go to the beach, sometimes I like look for an exit route. I'm like, how do I get out of here the quickest way? Where are the stairs? And I always thinking of the people that live on the beach, because those are like multi-million-dollar homes. I'm like, I guess you're just fine if this happens. I guess you just commit.
I always think about that too. With like, you have spent an exorbitant amount of money to live here, and your house is on stilts over water. Like,
yeah.
why?
Oh yeah, that always freaked me out. Like I never liked the idea of anything being on stilts. And like that does not seem secure enough. I know that there's like a architectural reason why they have to be, like it's something about the sway and it's good for hurricanes or whatever, at least in like Florida or North Carolina. But I'm like, I don't know. I would rather just be on solid dirt ground. Seems so much safer.
But just watch the next time you'll see it'll be like Dani Fernandez buys beachside, whatever.
I mean, I hope that happens.
I want that for you. I do want you to have that.
But then you have like a high rise, maybe like downtown or something, just really like far and high above ground in case you have to run away. That's all.
I think for me, it just means that I have committed to like, okay, I'm fine if I die this way. If y'all find out that I bought a beach house, it's because you realize that I came to terms with my own mortality. So,
and have come to terms with this fear in a way as well.
True.
I'm trying to decide if this is beautiful or horrifying, like reading that piece of information. If I would be like, ooh, chills, or if I'd be like, good for her. You know, I don't know. I'm not
sure. So just what I'm saying is invite me to your beach house for exposure therapy. Really.
Oh, yes. Anybody who has one, Dani's looking for an invite. She's ready. Do you avoid or have like no problem with like movies that have tsunamis in them? Because I feel like every disaster apocalypse movie has a tsunami in it.
It does terrify me, yeah. Interesting, because those are not even considered horrors, right? They're typically action movies. And I love horror. And so I have a lot of the artwork behind me is from different like horror films. That doesn't scare me. It's like ghosts and serial killers, fine. Mother Nature, no one can stop her. There's something like it's so what we have no power over the ocean. We have no power. I mean, it's stronger than all of us. I think there's something to that.
Yeah, just the like empty abyss that can take you at any time.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because you were saying that Deep Impact was like very impactful. Sorry for the pun on you growing up. But I kind of feel like at the same time, like Deep Impact was around, there was like a lot of action movies that were just like straight up horrifying that were all about just nature. It was like that was a villain. It was like the volcano. Like we had Dante's Peak. And then I think we had... Do we have a movie called Volcano? Am I misremembering that?
Literally called Volcano. There was a movie.
There's like the volcano on the cover of the the VHS tape. But I think it's really interesting. So when you were growing up, would you say that you got into horror before watching those films, or was it sort of at the same time?
Yeah, I think it was at the same time, to be honest. But like the horror ones we weren't really supposed to be watching. So it'd always be like, you know, when HBO or like Showtime would have like a weekend for free where you could watch it. And so like that's when we would watch a bunch of our movies that we weren't supposed to watch when we were like babysitting ourselves. So I think that's where I was exposed to a lot of horror. Remember is it The Haunting?
Yes.
Was that with Owen Wilson and like
yes.
Oh yeah. They used to like play that back then, and that was like one that I enjoyed. I didn't think it was bad. I recently found out that it was not good.
No, it's so funny that you say this. I'm sorry, I got so excited really quick, but we have not really talked about this movie on this podcast, and that movie was like, it was always on TV. I was obsessed with it. And I also thought it was a good movie, but recently found out that it has like a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Also that the director like left the business.
Oh my God.
Yeah. There was like this whole article on it, but it was basically, it talked about like, I don't know. It was this whole thing of like dealing with studios and how like they can mess up everything. And so there's like a whole article on like what happened to this director.
Oh no, that's really saying something. If like this experience was that bad that they were like, I'm done with this.
I think so.
Oh no.
Yeah. I have been through multiple earthquakes, multiple tornadoes when I was in Texas, a couple of monsoons. So I have survived a couple of things. The
You've been
tornadoes
battling
are intense.
weather. You have your fear. You have been contending with it all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Have there ever been any tsunamis like in the LA, like on LA's beaches? Probably not, right?
I don't know. You would think that it would be because we get earthquakes.
Right, exactly. I know. I mean, that is a thing I remember. I think it was like 2 summers ago, maybe 3 summers ago, when all those earthquakes like kind of happened in a week. It was like pretty intense. I was in Europe, so I did not experience any of it. It was like the 2 weeks where my mom was visiting and watching my dog. She was like there for all the earthquakes. But I think they said don't go to the beach, because if you go to the beach and there is an earthquake, it could trigger a tsunami. But I don't remember there ever actually being one. So I guess that's good, or not, because I mean, I don't know.
Kaitlin knows, but a lot of my family lives in Sri Lanka, and they were all there for that big one in 2009, whenever that was. And it they were like, yeah, the trains were whipped off the tracks and everything's gone. It's like, oh my God. Luckily, crazy things happen in Sri Lanka, and my family always manages to dodge them, no Suryagi casualties. And I'm like, wow, good job, guys. Again, because there's a natural disaster there every 10 years, and they're always fine.
Yeah,
but they're very casual. Yeah, they're good at hiding from the weather, I guess. But they're very casual about it too. And I'm like, I mean, in these movies, it's well, I don't even know. In The Day After Tomorrow, you were kind of saying, it's what do you do? And people in that movie make so many different choices. And then, seeing the people that left, the people that decided not to leave. And do you have any thoughts on what you would do in one of these scenarios?
I feel like I would. I don't know. I always think I wouldn't be the person that would leave to go find help, but I feel like I would. I also did. This is just info for this podcast. I did a past life reading and saw that my family had left, it was in I don't know how many hundreds of years ago, but they left our little community to go and find resources and didn't come back. And I had a visceral,
oh my God.
I was crying during this session. This is not something they told me, by the way. They were walking me through, what do you see? What is this and that? And so that was one of the things that I saw. And I just started well, he was where is your family? Do you see them? Are they in the, and I just started bawling. And he was oh my God, what is going on? And I was they're gone. They left to go get food, and they did not come back. And so anyways, knowing that, I was oh, maybe I wouldn't be the person. Clearly, if this is true in another life, I literally was not the person to leave. I was don't worry, y'all put yourself in harm's way, and I will hang out here with Nana and
the dogs.
Whoops. But anyways.
Wow. So you filled that information in yourself, as you were being guided through? Oh my, I didn't know that's how they work.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing an actual past life regression, and I've I'm working on a couple of different projects and shows and things that deal with that. So I had to research them, but it was something that I ended up really resonating with. And so I went to see this really well recommended person that can help you do regressions. And he's just asking questions the whole time. He's not telling you or feeding you anything. And I felt it you're under hypnosis or whatever, but I could remember most things. But my showrunner on the show that I'm on, she also has been heavily involved in that. And she said that they recorded it when she did it, and she didn't even sound like herself. When she played it back, that she sounded, she was I don't remember saying this, and I kind of did too on mine. I sounded not. This has turned into a whole other chat, but
no, I love it. This is our favorite thing. Anytime we can get a little I don't know if supernatural is the right word, but
a spiritual,
spiritual
vibe.
Yeah, we're always spiritual.
Tell us more, please. It's fascinating. Yeah. Could you see yourself? Could you see what you looked like, or
I could see down? I was a guy. I also ended up having they walk you through there's a great book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. That's I was like skeptical, and then I read that book and I was like, oh my God. Or actually, I listened to it. That's where I get all of my books on like audiobooks. Still counts.
It's still reading. I don't like people who judge that. I'm like, that's bullshit. No, like, it's still reading.
It's just easier for me when I'm driving and cleaning and all this stuff, like and so anyway, so when I listened to that though, I was like, oh yeah, I'm a believer now. And yeah, I could see myself. I remember I was very mad. It was like all these like emotions just like rushed into my head. And he was like, why are you mad? I'm like, because these people over here, we were on a beach. I was like, they're celebrating. They're like doing a cookout. And again, this is like hundreds of years ago. And I was very upset and we could not figure out why I was upset. So he like took me back to my village. I was like trying to figure out. And then I saw that my family was gone. And that was why I was mad. So.
And they're gone because they were trying to find like things for the community.
Yeah, they were off, and it was something that because he was asking me about that, and he was like, were they forced to? And it was like, no, different like elders like select like if they're going to go. And so it was both my parents that I remember. They had decided like, oh, it's our turn. We're going to go out, and get resources or food or whatever. And they just didn't come back.
Could you tell where you were? Like what, like part of the country, or was it this country? Was it a different country?
I don't know. I don't know that part. I know that we were on a beach. So, because I know I was like literally sitting there staring out. I was super emo. I was staring out at the water. I could like smell the smoke though of them like cooking meat next to me. So
wow. This is wild.
I want to do this. So
yeah, you should.
I will.
I can send you all the info. And definitely read that book because I think it's super eye-opening. And the reason why is because it's a psychiatrist. It was like a woman that had a fear of drowning. She had but it was like so debilitating to her and she did not know why. And it turned out in a past life that she had drowned. And so it actually helped her. And he didn't mean to do that, by the way. He didn't mean like, he was just he was trying to bring up childhood memories, like maybe something that happened in her childhood, but she accidentally went back too far. So she went back before her childhood to her life before that. And so she was saying all this stuff and he was able to verify a lot of it. Because that's another thing is a lot of times it'll be things that are set in that time period or culturally, in that time period or where they're at. And so that was really fascinating to me, but he was able to help her get over that fear by realizing like that, I'm at peace. That didn't happen this lifetime. I don't have to fear that, or whatever. And she was able to let that go. So.
Wow. Do you feel like for you at all, like fear of tsunamis, things to do at the beach, like, do you feel like that is a past life thing for you?
I don't know. Maybe it is.
I kind of want it to be because that would be cool.
I want to do
my
this.
Fear of the family thing is because at the end he was like, why did you show this to her? He's like asking your spirit guides or your higher self or whatever, like why out of all of especially if you have multiple past lives, like why did you show her this one? And I think it was something having to do because I'm actually not that close with my family and I've cut a lot of ties with a lot of my family. And so I think it was that you can like persevere, like you can move on. And I ended up having my own family in that lifetime. And so I think it was a part of that. Like, it's okay. You can survive on your own and you can make a new family and have your own. Like, it was very fascinating, that aspect of it.
So it turned out to be very relevant to your current life.
Yeah, but it took me months to grasp that. I only put it together recently.
I find this stuff so fascinating. Like, I'm not a religious person or anything, and I wouldn't even say I'm like a spiritual person, but of all the things, I feel like past lives resonates the most with me because I'm like, what if our consciousness just jumps or just, it's like maybe it's just all one line and it's broken up by time, like broken up by lifetimes. I find that so fascinating. I want to go get this done and I will report back. So yeah, we'll see.
I'll send you all the info. The funniest thing that I asked, though, I was like, do I have to come back here? And they said no. And I was like, hell yeah.
one-time thing.
Well, no, I meant like, do I have to come back to Earth? I was like, do I have to do this again? Like, that's what I meant. Like, do I have to come back to Earth because this planet is trash? I'm like,
coming more so.
I'm like, can I hang out up there? Can I go somewhere else? And they were basically like, no, I don't have to. I don't have to. But apparently, I chose like. Anyways, I could talk about this literally forever.
Oh my God.
Because this is like an element of some of the stuff that I'm writing on. So yeah.
Do you feel like any other fears that you might have, even separately from tsunamis, are related to maybe things that you uncovered in this life reading session?
Trying to think. No, I all I can think of is that like fear of loss. I think that it's like it does feel, I do have a couple of wounds. I would say I have some relationship wounds that feel like they're not just from this lifetime because they're so deep. There are things that I refer to as like soul wounds when something happens in your life that is so traumatic and traumatizing and it just actually changes who you are. Like you don't look at the world the same anymore and you're not the same anymore after this thing happened. And to me, that's like a mortal wound that I often think of it that way in my own life. And so there's like one or two things that have happened with one or two exes that I felt like I knew you in a past life. I know I did. This feels too deep. It's taking too long for me to overcome this, that it feels like it's not just this betrayal in this lifetime, but from another lifetime. It just feels so deep.
What are the odds of two people crossing paths like across that much time?
They're actually not uncommon because the way that my spirituality, the way that I believe it, is that you agreed to that. Like up up in the upstairs.
Yeah.
If me and my ex, I'll use him as an example, in our past life, had a tumultuous time. I see us almost like Frida Kahlo and Diego, like just like very passionate but should not be together and toxic and like all of that. Then in the next life you might agree like, hey, we're gonna work this out and I will see you again. And it might be toxic and it might be bad, but this time you moved a little bit further. So for me, what I personally believe with my ex is that this time around, like we didn't get married, we didn't have a family, like we didn't do that. Like we ended it before that. So you're making like progress along the way. But I don't think it's uncommon. And I feel like a lot of people that do believe in past lives and reincarnation do believe that like you have some soul contracts with some people. Including like your parents. So
but like it's not like they're always going to come back as your parents.
Yep. Yeah, you're
which
right.
Is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cool to think about. I feel like there's something kind of healing if you think about it as the person that you're maybe fighting with or having like a dramatic time with, you and them meet wherever in this plane and you have like a conversation that's like neutral and like beneficial where it's like, that was bad. We're good with like fixing that. And it's like very neutral. It's like, okay, we both agree that we're going to find a new path for us, like in another lifetime. And I just think that's a really nice way to just like think about relationships where it's like, even if you don't figure it out now, maybe you will. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I want to say the reason why I really like doubled down on this is because I did have one reader that told me like, oh, you were this person in a past life. And I kind of was like, yeah, okay. This wasn't like a regression that I did. She was just telling me like it came up in the reading. And I was like, yeah, I guess so. I don't really care about my past. I care about my future. That's what I always say. Like, I just tell me like, what movie do I get to be in? What show have I sold? Like, that's all I care about. I don't care about what happened to past Dani or past whatever that person is. I don't care. I'm sorry. But she told me, and then like months later, I'm like, well, I should look that up. And so I looked up, it was a singer, a Latin American singer. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be like, but like from the 1800s. Looked her up. And I was like, okay. Oh, wow. We have like some things in common. Then I looked at her husband, looked just like my ex, from the same place. They're from the same country. I was like, oh, no, I can't. I sent it to my friends and they're like, what the fuck? It just looked like it was like an 1800s version of him. And I was like, all right, okay. And in that life, he cheated. He had multiple affairs. And I was like, okay. So this dickhead has bothered me in multiple lifetimes. But in this lifetime, like I said, I like passed the test to some extent, right? Like I moved farther ahead in this. But I do believe that we probably were up there in the grade upstairs and we were like, all right, so we're going to redo this. And this time, you're going to pick yourself. You're going to have validation in yourself. You're not going to need, whatever, like all of the things that my soul needed to learn. So that's what I believe. Yeah.
Damn. I've heard some people that have done this and the conclusions they've come to, I've been like, I don't think this is real. But
yeah,
this is the first time where I'm like, okay, I need to know. I truly need to know. Because I do think there's something to it. I think it also depends on the person and how they, interpret things. And I think some people have a tendency to interpret things in a way that's not super useful in the grand scheme. But it's also very interesting because I think, this podcast is about fear, childhood fear, and fear is trauma, right? Fear is an inciting incident that now has sparked something, worth being afraid of. And it's so cool to think about how that could have been with you for many lifetimes.
Yeah.
And like that woman's fear of drowning, it's because it did happen at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Dani, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us today. Where can our listeners find you?
I'm at Ms. Dani Fernandez. It's MSDANIFERNANDEZ. Yeah, thank you for letting me talk about all of this spiritual woo-woo stuff.
We're very into it. This is like one of the first times I'm like, okay, I'm gonna. How much does it cost? I don't care. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, or just listen to the book and make your decision yourself. Like, do that first, and then be like, oh, I do want to do this. Yeah,
totally. Well,
amazing.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And this is Scaredy Chat. We'll catch you next time. All right, Scaredy Cats, please do at least one of these things. Share this podcast with someone else who loves to get scared and talk about their fears. And go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review. It does us a huge, huge, huge favor if you don't mind. And hey, you should also maybe consider following us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at scaredychat_podcast. And you've listened to a few episodes now. If you're like, hey, I have a scary story from my childhood that they should talk about, we will. Send it to us at story@scaredychatpod.com. See you later, Scaredy Cats. Scaredy Chat was developed and hosted by Kaitlin Riley and Monica Suryagi. Produced by Jeff Swimmer. Editing and sound design by Fitz Harris. Theme music by Eric Fashingbauer with samples by Jeff Zahn and Jack Lenz. And Gail Gilman is the executive producer.